What about you folks, it's Lostarot here and welcome to LST Plays. With the recent beta being out and now finally ended, I felt a review was in order and perhaps to give a brief history of my relationship with FPS games and Battlefield specifically. Now let me just pretext that by saying that this is more of a suggestive piece, as with the game not being available yet, not out yet, and this being a beta and more importantly free, we can't exactly say anything too negative about the game. So for you fans out there, I'm most certainly not going to be one of those people that have been crying about stability of the beta and not being able to get on and play a free, there's that word again, experience. So I want us to focus on the positives and perhaps talk about the things which we, i.e. me, would like to see put into the full release or perhaps removed and balanced. But before we get into the pros and cons, let me just say this. It's been a long time since I felt excited about a Battlefield game. In fact, the last time was for Battlefield 3, and once I had my fill of that game, I actually lost a lot of interest with the series. I'd felt that Battlefield was perhaps going too far with its assistance weaponry, and for me, had removed itself just a little bit too far from the classic Battlefield style of simplicity and gameplay. Now that's not to say I didn't enjoy 3 and didn't get any of those great Battlefield moments that you'd expect from the game series. Myself and my friends had an absolute blast with 3, but when 4 came out, I just wasn't interested. I knew that it would be very similar to 3, and at the time Modern Warfare shooters just weren't working for me. I think once Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare was released, we saw a large bunch of companies reaching for their computers and saying the future is now and the future is modern, and I'd pretty much just had enough of it at that stage. So basically I had wanted to go back to the past for some time and experience some of that classic Battlefield style that I was first introduced to, and that was the first ever Battlefield game I played was 1942, and I absolutely loved it, primarily because next to Unreal Tournament 2004 it was one of the very first online shooters I'd ever played. My mind was like absolutely blown just in the variety of the gameplay that you could play as. So you could play in planes, tanks, infantry, etc. As well as the subsequent expansions and just what they added to that game specifically. Now, what early Battlefield players also got to experience is the modding community for Battlefield. And Jesus, did 1942 had some great mods. 2 of which I'd say probably inspired some of the games down the line that we see come out of DICE and EA. These mods were specifically Desert Combat and Star Wars Galactic Conquest. So you might say I was pretty spoiled for a first experience with online shooters. It wasn't too long after this that Battlefield 2 came out, and well, pretty much the rest is history. So here we are in 2016, and DICE's latest answer to this year's COD game is not only a World War game, but a World War game that had previously not been touched really, to my knowledge, the Great War, World War 1. So, I could suppose say that. One of the first images I saw of Battlefield 1 pretty much made me instantly want this game, and that image was of a land ship, a British Mark V tank. The reason I got excited was not really down to some kind of weird obsession with tanks, or even for like the next Battlefield game, but rather that I loved that tank scene in Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, where they're fighting on the Mark V. It's amazing. But that said, however, the more I saw of the game, the more I wanted it, and lo and behold, the beta came out. So now that we've all, hopefully all of you out there anyway, have had a chance to play it, was it any good? Well, let's get into the crux of things with some pros. Firstly, the graphics. I mean, Star Wars Battlefront is a thing of beauty. I don't think anyone can dispute that. It's great to look at. But in my opinion, this is exceeding that again. With some tweaks here and some tweaks there, this thing is shaping up to be the prettiest FPS game ever created. DICE are so into their lighting, and I think it's a big reason that the Battlefield games since 3 have been just getting better and better to look at time and time again. Now, complementing that stunning scenery, we also have some of the best gun and ambient sounds in Battlefield today. I think it's almost as good as Battlefield Bad Company 2's gun sounds. If you remember back to, if you played Battlefield Bad Company 2, which I played a lot of on the Xbox 360, the gun sounds in that were like completely ridiculous. They were just so loud and over the top. So it's great to see some great sound engineering going into this one as well. Now, moving on to the UI, the interface. Now this is a hope. I really hope that we've seen the last of Battlelog, the website. I mean, it was great at the time. 3 I think was the first one that used it. But the fact that you couldn't really customize your loadout in game was just no good to me, especially in 4. 4 just felt completely disconnected from the actual game itself. But now in the beta and seemingly going forward, at least you can customize and actually buy guns in the loadout screen and change things on the fly. Which basically leads on to another point, which is every kit seems more diverse thanks to this customizing in the game. You can switch things up a bit and feel like if a weapon isn't working too well, or you want to add in an anti-tank grenade, like a light anti-tank grenade to your kit, you can do that. So if I'm a medic, I can actually add in a grenade that might help me in a fight with a tank. Probably not much, but it might help anyway. Now we have to touch on the environment. Now, only having played this map, obviously I can't comment on others, but I can sort of comment on what I've seen and what I sort of expect just from playing this one. I love what they're doing with the weather. The weather specifically just is great. The sandstorms are incredible, and they definitely change the fight around almost completely. So if you're a bomber, good luck seeing ground targets, and if you're a sniper, good luck shooting guys at distance, because visibility drops dramatically. And I really hope they're going to keep that in that. They did send out a survey asking specifically, did the weather pretty much break the game? And I hope they just keep it in the way it is at the moment, anyway, with the sandstorms. But from what I understand of the other maps that they've shown, or the other map that they've shown, trenches fill up with water from rainfall. So there's definitely a lot more destruction in the environment. In Battlefield 1, if you launch a bomb and it explodes on the ground, it creates a nice crater, like a really nice crater that tanks will fall into and dip out of. And apparently in other levels you'll get rain that will actually fill those up and create like a water hazard as well, which is just, oh, it's so good to see. So I can't wait to see what else they've put into the full game on the other maps. It would be great to see what they can do with snow, or even like a mudslide or something as well. So I sort of touched on it there, but tanks and vehicles definitely feel a lot more useful. Promote co-op play a lot more just due to the gunnery positions on them. My favourite is the light tank because of the speed, which is it's the only one that actually has one seat. So I'm talking about co-op and stuff there, but I just love the speed of it. But the land ship and the heavy tank are a lot of fun to play with, as you can fit your entire squad in there with you, and you've got room for others as well, which is awesome. So I definitely love them, and they feel big and chunky, and you just feel like you're just bombarding across these sand dunes anyway in that level, and it just feels great. Epic moments. So that's pretty much, I mean, the game speaks for itself. I think when you see a video of it and you see it playing, you should get a feeling of just how epic the game actually is. But there are some cons. So let's just say, again, this is a beta, so these are more niggles and possibly things that I'd like to see nerfed or rethought. So we'll start with the first one, horses. I know horses are big, but seriously, sometimes you have to empty like an entire clip into them, and they keep on trucking. As well as that, the range on the sword is pretty ridiculous. I've had kill cams where the horse and the rider seemingly pull me into the sword, like some kind of animation is kicking off, like a vortex or something. I hope to see a bit of balancing done to our equine friends, as overall I do love the addition of horses, and I think the animations are class. I just think that maybe they are a wee bit OP at the moment. Speaking of OP, shotguns. Maybe it's just me and my friends, but the shotguns do seem to that they need a balance before launch, as there were a few games whereby like a guy was at range and would just one hit us without a headshot, and we were just left scratching our heads going like, what the hell happened there? It didn't seem to be hacking. That was my first thought, but like shotguns just seem to be a little bit too powerful at the moment at range, and perhaps they just need to be brought down a little bit. But most other guns I've tried seemed great and well balanced, so again, there's a positive to a negative. Cost. So this is a big one. My friends and I are pretty much in agreement that the cost is pretty steep, and I would imagine that most of you out there will probably agree with this, but $64.99 for the deluxe edition, which comes with some extra skins in game, and the ultimate edition consisting of the same deluxe features but with future DLC, and that costs £104.98. Yeah. Now, I can't exactly say, hey, your game is not worth this money, as who am I to judge what they charge? I just hope that we get more content than we did with Star Wars Battlefront, which, just to point out, had a very similar launch price and hardly the content to justify the cost. At least with this one, we're getting a campaign for this one. There's no details on that, how long it's going to be. I'd imagine it'd be quite short, and probably will be quite, you'd probably be able to throw it away, essentially. Most people would be just going for the multiplayer, but it's nice that they've actually put something in this one. Now, with that said, we're not out of the shade yet. The Deluxe and Ultimate Edition both list early access to the game in addition to those skins. Now, if you've watched my Deus Ex video on Mankind Divided, you would have seen a very similar ploy by Square Enix in their pre-order campaign. So I'm not going to just flame on EA and DICE yet, primarily EA because they are the publisher, with the game not being out yet, and the content beyond the launch not being fleshed out in addition to a lot of the game, but it does look like EA are up to their old tricks again. So I think I'll probably be applying the same principles to this one, in that I'll wait for the content to be announced for the DLC before I sink any kind of additional money into the game beyond the initial purchase, because the standard edition for PC is $49.99, and I would imagine that consoles are probably going to release at the same price, and for me that's enough money to be sinking into a game on day one. I don't think any additional money should be sunk into a game beyond 50 quid, because that's a lot of money. And finally, let's just touch on DDoS attacks. Now, it could be argued that this is not really in their control per se, because if somebody decides to, perform a takedown service on EA and just bombard their servers with crap, what's going to stop them? But the one thing I really want to see for this launch of the actual game is a much smoother release. So taking as much on board as they can from lessons learned with the launch of Battlefield 4, it would be a smart idea to strengthen their online security as much as possible, regardless of who at EA calculates the risk versus cost, because that's what that comes down to, is just how much money do we sink into the security precautions of people going to attempt these denial of service attacks. But on a brief note with that, we did see a denial of service in the beta period, which also attacked Blizzard as well. I think it was primarily done to Blizzard, but I'm not 100% on that. But it could be a sign of things to come if EA don't strengthen that security service and the back end of Battlefield. I'm hoping that they really do, but I'm optimistic anyway. I'm hopeful that they will be releasing a lot more sort of security compliance, perhaps around the launch. So that's all I've got really to say. All in all, the beta was a lot of fun, and the game is shaping up to be something more than just another Battlefield game that panders to the COD audience, which is what essentially I thought of 4. I thought that it pandered to that crowd too much, that just like the sort of quick shooters, and it felt very sort of spawn die, and I was looking for something a little bit different, and I think we're going to get it with this one. So I for one will be looking forward to the launch date, and I hope to see you on the battlefield.